Now, the First and Deputy First Ministers are in the United States. The coast-to-coast trip was initially conceived as a positive roadshow of Northern Ireland. Instead, it's taking place against a very different backdrop. To find out how that's affecting the message, I'm joined now from New York by our political editor, Mark Devenport. Mark, just update us on what they've done to date, because the trip was delayed and, of course, there is a different backdrop now.
Yes, they had to change their arrangements, Jim. As you can see, I'm in New York. That's because Martin McGuinness is here. We're expecting him to have an event today about undocumented Irish and their problems here. And then tomorrow there's due to be an announcement of a multi-million-dollar fund that will be available for use in Northern Ireland. It involves pension money from the New York State. Now, that doesn't mean that that money will actually find its way to Northern Ireland, because we've had a similar announcement already in which money has been earmarked but hasn't actually got to Northern Ireland for various reasons. But that's due to happen tomorrow. Peter Robinson is in Chicago, or has been in Chicago, meeting employers like Allstate and other employers that employ people back in Northern Ireland, essentially telling them, if you're going to be making cuts around the world, don't make them in Northern Ireland. And then he's going to go directly on to Washington, and the culmination of this trip will be a meeting with President Obama on Tuesday. Of
course, that is the big event, the first St. Patrick's Day in an Obama White House. I mean, how much does the context of what's happened here change how they deliver the message and what message they actually get out while they're there in the States?
Well, I think they probably are more on the back foot than they would have been, obviously, if these shootings hadn't happened. They've been trying to kind of set them in context. They were on the West Coast meeting people to do with the film and technology worlds, and they were quoted there as pointing out that the murder rate in Los Angeles is an awful lot more severe than the murder rate in Northern Ireland. Nevertheless, they had hoped, I suppose, to portray a message of Northern Ireland as a place that had basically resolved its conflict. Instead, they're having to stress it's a work in progress, but that they believe that it will work and that they will be able to marginalise the supporters of the dissidents. So I suppose it's a little bit more of a defensive message than they maybe have been putting otherwise.
And of course, Mark, you'll be hearing more from the American politicians over the next day or two. What do you expect them to say about events over the past week?
Well, I would expect in those meetings that will be going on in Washington that we'll be hearing continued pledges of political, maybe to a lesser extent, economic support given the global economic downturn. But they will continue. They've already obviously condemned the murders. They'll be continuing to pledge support for the new Northern Ireland. And whilst obviously the image has been of division back in Northern Ireland, here it's still the sort of extraordinary mix that you only see when the politicians come across the Atlantic. In the same hotel, I should tell you, Jim, in New York, last night I saw, staying there, and they're probably having their breakfast in the same room at the moment, Brian Cowan, the Taoiseach obviously, Ian Paisley Sr., Martin McGuinness, Margaret Ritchie, all gathered in that same breakfast room, even as I speak right now, I imagine.
OK, so a picture of unity in the States. Mark, many thanks indeed.